So what is this design principle means? Principles means what? Okay, the journal like meaning of these principles, right? Nothing but a steps or a procedures to follow something, right? A procedures to follow something, right? So there will be some principles, some steps for the Java developers, not Java developers, for a web developers, those who are using this JavaScript as a scripting language. There are some of the principle. Okay, though the code what that web developers are writing, that should pass or that should cover all the principles what has given by that organization. Okay, what are given by the organization? What are the principles or that all the JavaScript developers or that web page should cover up is, you know about layers, right? So layers basically what is the use of layers or the principles? What these layers will do, right? These layers will make those code, okay, whatever the code written by the developers, right? Those code will be reusable, right? And the quality of the code will be very good. It's very effective if the all developers has followed those principles, right? So if I am a developer, if I write some type of program and other developer will write some type of program, other developer or third person will write some type of program, means all the web program again the browser should display, right? So browse the different way of the program or different way of program, the browser may not able to write a display. It may not able to compile those things, right? That is the reason. So there will be some principles, there are some procedures that all the browsed web developers has to follow, and these layers, some of the layers, right, in the browser that will compile, that will execute the JavaScript, right? What are the layers? Right. So basically, this Java design principle helps the code to be very effective, very qualitative, and reusability will be very easy. Okay, if any other person want to use that particular code, means he can use, or the same person he want to do modification in the same code, means he can do, right? So all those things it can be achieved by using this some of the design principles, right? So we have some of the layers, right? So that the JavaScript or the web page will be followed. One is presentation layer, one is presentation layer, second one is the validation layer, and third one is the asynchronous layer. Okay, third one is asynchronous. Okay, so spelling ASYNCHRO, asynchronous. Okay, third one is the asynchronous layer. These are the three layers that the JavaScript will validate, the JavaScript will go across. Okay, so what is presentation layer? The first one is what is presentation layer? By the name, it's indicating what is presentation, means how the developer want to present, how the developer want to showcase his content in the web browser to the user. Okay, that comes under this presentation. Nothing but how the content should display to the user, right? In what manner, okay, how effective, in what color, right? And what are the things you want to include in that web page? All those things will be covered up in this presentation layer, in this layer. Okay, so here the presentation layer mainly focuses on what? Display of information to the user, display of information, right? So the normal HTML or CSS, what it will do, it has the like it can able to just display some of the images, right? The text, right? Some hyperlinks, those things we can do with the help of HTML and the CSS. The CSS will do just it will helpful to just beautify the our web page, right? Apart from that, it will not do anything, right? So but in order to what to do a more task, to do more work, right, on my web browser, nothing but to send request for the server, right? Then downloading that particular HTML file in the browser, all those things will be done by whom? The JavaScript, the scripting language will do those tasks, right? So the presentation layer, what it will do, it will basically what used or focuses on what display of information, how my content should display in the browser, right? How my content should display in our browser, right? This is what a presentation layer is. Nothing but this application or this layer will include like hiding. I want to hide some content. It will help to hide the content. To create a new content, it will help to create a new content, right? Then what we want to showcase, right? All those things we can do in this presentation layer. We can do in the presentation layer. Means this presentation layer is most closely to user side, means user experience, right? By seeing the web browser page, by seeing the web page, how the user will respond, how the user will, how that content will display to the user, right? So this presentation layer basically will be at the side of users, right? How the user will experience the web page. This is regarding the presentation layer, right? So what presentation layer display, presentation layer display focuses on it will focus on display of information, display of information to the users. Display of information to the users is basically done in this presentation layer, right? Done in this presentation layer, right? Next, validation layer. By the name of presentation, we can say that it is presenting, right? Showcasing to the users. Validation means what? Checking, right? Whether the content, what the user is writing, what the user is putting in that web page, right? Putting in the web page, all the content are proper or not. All the content are proper or not. To validate, right? So one example, right? So I request for Facebook web page. Okay, www.facebook.com. I will give the request for the server. Server will send that web page. It is Facebook web page. It will be displayed on my browser now. Now to log in, I have to give the something like username and password. I have to give. Right? You consider email ID. Okay, email ID and password. Right? I will give the email ID. Like something like vivek@gmail.com. I will. It's a means it will check that particular mail ID is proper or not. Okay, if it is proper, then it allow a user to enter to the next page, right? So it will pre-validate who the browser will validate, right? So what I will do in that web page, means in the Facebook web page, I will give the proper mail ID and my password. If both are correct, then I am able to log in into my Facebook page, right? Log into my Facebook account, right? So once I give my proper email ID and proper password, I will use what? Sign in or login, right? That particular content, that request has been again sent to the server. The server will validate over there whether the password and email ID is correct or not. But here what it will do, the email ID, what I'm giving, it's a proper email ID or not. For example, vivek@gmail.com. Gmail.com is a proper mail ID. In place of gmail.com, what I will do, just give some other name, right? g.com. Okay, vivek@g.com. It's not a proper mail ID, right? So it will pre-validate in the browser itself that the email ID what we are writing, it is of improper, it is not appropriate, it is inappropriate, right? Then it will that particular thing will display, okay, email ID is improper or it's wrong, like it will display. That part we're going to done in the validation layer. And after giving that mail ID and password, we'll submit that, we'll log in. That particular content will be sent to the server. There it will validate properly whether the given mail ID and password is to that particular person or not, to a correct person or not. Though the email ID is of correct email ID, but for that account, he is the owner. He is a authenticated person or not. To check that one, in server it will be that work will be it will check. But in the browser side, it will validate whether that particular email ID is proper or not, right? It's proper or not. Those things going to be do in the validation, right? So presentation, display of information to the user, In validation, it will validate the content at the browser side. It will pre-validate, not validate, it will pre-validate before sending that page to the server to validate. Once it will, the browser will check in its place. Okay, when it download that HTML page. Okay, that is what the validation layer is. Okay, next is asynchronous layer. Right? Okay, what validate will do? It will validate the user content browser. Okay, it will validate the user content at the browser. That is what a validation layer will do. Then, what is asynchronous layer now? Right. So synchronous means what? Synchronous means here the client or the browser, right? Client is nothing but a browser. The browser will request. The browser will request for the server to web page. Right. The server will respond to that request. That is what synchronous. Okay. Continuous harmony between. Right. Continuous communication is happening between the client side and the server side. Client side is browser, right? Browser and the what with the server, right? So now what I will do, you guys have noticed, you guys have observed, right? You've also gone across those things. If our internet is very low, okay, our bandwidth is very low. If I give any website name like www.gmail.com, right, that particular web page will be loading, right? That browser will be loading that page. Means it's at send the request. The browser has sent the request for the server, right? Server has received that request, but response has not yet came to the browser, right? The response has not yet came to the browser. The wait time is there, right? The wait time. Now the client has sent the request, but response is not yet come from the server. That wait time, right? That wait time, we say it as a fail safe page, or you can, okay, I'll leave that one, say fail safe. Okay, that wait time, we say it as a asynchronous layer. Asynchronous layer will do what it will do. So here one best example now, right? So I will use www.gmail.com, right? So nothing but the browser has requested this web page, right? What gmail.com Gmail page, it has requested to the server. Now the server should send that page, right? The server should send that Gmail page to the browser to display, right? So until the browser will be in the loading state, right? But at the backend side, this asynchronous layer continuously sending the request. Means the browser is requesting, the client is requesting this web page, okay, through HTTP, right? Every protocol, every communication happened with help of HTTP protocol, right? I explained this already. All right. So asynchronous layer is sending the request continuously for the server to give this web page, right? So means that particular web page in the browser in the loading state, right? In the loading state means that browser should stick to that page, right? It should not it should not move to any other particular page. Okay, it should stick to that particular page until the response has get from the server. Okay, once it get response from the server, that web page, it will display the portion of the page. It will display that page to the user, right? That is what a asynchronous layer will do, right? So what asynchronous layer will do? Now the one client will request for the server to a page, one web page, right? The server should send the response to the client. That wait time is there, right? So once request is sent from the client and response is sent from the server, this time is there, right? In middle, that some wait time is there, right? In that time, the asynchronous layer or this asynchronous layer will continuously sending a request for the server. Okay, the client or the browser is requesting for this web page, right? You just give that web page as much as early as possible, right? So in order to display that particular page on the browser, right? That is what this asynchronous layer will do. This is what this asynchronous layer will do. This is what these design principles, right? These are the 3 design principles that every web developer, if you are using his JavaScript in his HTML code, right, to display any particular web page, using any scripting language like JavaScript, he has to perform these actions. Means his script, the developer script should work, right? That should work on these three layers. These are some of the principles given by the JavaScript, right? So first, the presentation layer, display of information to the user. Validation layer, it validates the user content at the browser side. Asynchronous layer, okay, asynchronous layer, at the wait time, this asynchronous layer continuously sending the request for the server to respond to give that particular web page to display on the web browser. And this is what a design principle is. This is what the design principle is, right? So you can see here, this is the diagram, right? So HTML page, and HTML page, in that HTML page we are including the CSS, right? On the same HTML page you are using the JavaScript. First it will validate the presentation layer, and it will validate the validation layer, then the asynchronous layer. At last we have a framework. You just leave JavaScript framework, nothing but like plugins, right? So these frameworks will see that one. But presentation layer, validation layer, asynchronous, these are three layers we're going to use, right? Presentation layer, it focuses on display of information, right? Focuses on the display of information, right? This includes like creating, hiding, right, showing the contents, using it to the clients, to the users, right? So this is most closely to the user experience, because this content is displaying to the end users. It is visible to the end users. This is what the presentation layer. Presentation and validation layer both are in conjunction, because presentation layer will display the content to the user, and user will add the content, and this validate layer will validate that content, whether the content is correct or not, is proper or not, right? It's both are in conjunction, right? Both are in conjunction. So JavaScript can also be validate logical aspects of the user experience, right? This could be validating forms, nothing but email entered is valid before sending it to server. Before sending it to the server, right? It will be validated at the client machine only, right? So this is conjunction. Conjunction means these two are in contact. These two are in communicating, right? These two are in communicating between each other, right? This conjunction with the presentation. Validation layer is in conjunction with the presentation layer, right? So both layer exist on what? Client machine, because these two are doing at the client machine, nothing but at the browser. These two are performing at the browser, so these two are on the client machine, right? Then once it is validated, when it is pre-validated, that form will be sent to the server. That form will send to the server. What synchronous layer is? JavaScript operate in synchronous manner, nothing but request is sent to the server and response from the server, right? But during that wait time, during that wait between request and response, the browser in a loading state. Because not yet the page has been received to this browser to display. It's a loading state. You can see that some circle, right? It's loading. It's a loading state, right? The time between request and response, right? So at that time, in contrast, at that time, what this asynchronous layer will do, it will route. Route means it will send the request. Route means continuously. This asynchronous layer continuously sending the request to the server in the background, right? At the back end, this asynchronous layer sending the packet, sending the request, right? In networking word, we can say it as a packet, right? It's requesting to the server in the background, right? So through the HTTP to the server. Then once the request has been received by the server and the response has been sent to the server, that particular thing will be loaded and it will display to the user, to the browser. That is what this design principle is. That is what the design principle.